night just did. Funny how the years have flown, nothing's changed, and girl, you know that I belong to you. For a moment I went back in time, it passed before my eyes. The love, the heat, the passion that we shared. You look the same, so beautiful, nothing's changed, and girl, you know you're still the one I want, baby, stuck in my heart, and I'm just gonna tear us apart. Those summer nights, wildfire, crazy, crazy nights. It's never been more obvious, I guess I always knew that I belong to you. Oh yeah, I belong to you.
Hi everybody, this is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio. This is our show for worldwide broadcast on the last day of December 2017. I hope all of you had a good year and that this next one will be really great for everybody. I'm glad you're with us, and we have an incredible show tonight with two wonderful guests that we're going to introduce in some detail. Elana Freeland, who's author and speaker and researcher, Elana Freeland, who's been here several times on the show, and new friend Jamie Lee, who I just watched a great video from. He's got a site called APlaneTruth on YouTube, a channel, I guess. And the video that I just saw from him, which is up now, was combining a lot of interesting information about geoengineering and the next-red systems and many environmental issues that are being intentionally caused, the climate disruption and things like that. But what I'd like to do, as is our usual habit on this show, is I want to bring in the people who are not up to date or even familiar with any of this topic at all. We often talk to lots of people who are tuning in because they know all about these things already and they just want the latest information, which is fine. But to really do a better service, we want to be talking to the people who have no idea about some of the things that we're going to be discussing. So I want to ask Elana to bring us up to date how she first got involved in this kind of investigation that she is doing now and what became the topic of her books. And then I'm going to ask Jamie to do the same thing so that all of you feel like you know us all personally, and then we'll get into our topic after that. So, Elana, if you could just introduce yourself to brand new listeners, that would be great.
Thanks, Richard. I will do so. I began this journey that I now find myself on more than 2 decades ago, when I began researching for a series of books. I didn't know then it would be a series. I thought it was one book about America and what has happened to it since John F. Kennedy's assassination in Dallas. And I had many files open. The internet age was upon us then in the 90s, and I was digging deep. I was reading a lot of books in order to see just what had happened since 1963, since the Cold War. And one of the files I had open was on chemtrails, and another file I had open was on HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. And that would have been in the late 90s and early 2000s. At that time, I was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I became fast friends with Clifford Carnicom. Completely serendipitously. You know how things work in life. When you are pursuing a trail, then it seems that synchronicity kicks in and you begin to meet the people or the events that you need in order to pursue what you are pursuing. So Clifford and I would talk about what he was finding. That was, again, the early 2000s. And he had been already researching the skies over northern New Mexico and the chemical trails that he saw laid in that beautiful, what was once azure blue sky. He had a HEPA filter. He was collecting precipitation. So between what he was gathering from the air and from rain and snow, he was putting together a picture of a fiber that now is known as morgellons, and he was analyzing it on a shoestring budget. And one of the things he did was, just on a local level, wanted to gather saliva and blood from whoever we could find. And so I and a few of my friends provided that for Clifford. And I remember the afternoon I was there when we were looking at my red blood cells under his I think it was a 300 power microscope at that time. And I watched the morgellons entity sucking the iron out of my erythrocytes. This was a huge wake-up moment of what we were all subject to. And so that really was the moment I put my life on the line, in a way, you might say, and decided that I would pursue this. Then when I returned to the Pacific Northwest a few years later, Adam Parfrey at Feral House contacted me and asked if I thought I could write a book on chemtrails. I had done some work for Adam when I was living in England, done some editing, and so I said yes. At that time, I thought chemtrails and HAARP were separate issues. I didn't understand how they worked together. But I began researching and going into Bernard Eastland's early 1987 patents. And between many phone calls with Clifford, I was able to go through that patent and deconstruct it. That is really chapter 2 in the first book I wrote, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And that was where I began to see why the chemical trails were essential to the military-industrial intelligence complex desire to basically weaponize the entire planet Earth by means of electromagnetics. And so I began writing that book. It took approximately 2 years. It came out in 2014. In the last 4 years since then, well, actually, it took 3 years for me to write the sequel, which is the next phase of this technology, and I entitled that book "Under an Ionized Sky: From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown," and that book will be out this next month. And now I've begun the third and hopefully last book in the series, but it has to be written because what follows from all of this is the final phase of synthetic biology leading to a transhumanist future. So that's what I'm writing now, and I'm happy to be here. My new friend is Jamie, and Jamie is helping me right now to respond to some Portuguese citizens who also had a fire very similar to the Santa Rosa Ventura fires before those fires were set. And they are asking us for information that they can take to a commission that has been formed in Portugal, a government commission, to investigate the fires. So I'm happy to meet Jamie over internet, of course, and to be with Doug and Richard.
That's great. Okay, so there's a lot that we'll get into from that, but before we do, I want to ask Jamie to go back before he was involved in all these investigative topics and tell us about what your life was before that and what got you going in this direction and leading up to where you are now.
Thank you for having me on the show, Richard, and Elana. It's just an honor to be on the show with you. My background is I'm pretty much autodidactic. I pick things up myself and figure out things on my own without I never got through the schooling part of school government indoctrination, and so I had to figure stuff out for myself. Mm-hmm. I got into Wall Street, worked in New York City, then came out to San Francisco, and then started my own firm in '96. But I never realized all the conspiracy stuff until after 9/11, and I looked at the video Loose Change. I started getting into oil prices and finite oil, peak oil. That started me going, so I started growing food and tore up my grass and grew lawn at my house. Mm-hmm. And then I started figuring out that the economy could not last through the mortgage mess where, robo signings, $250,000 of debt or $500,000 for just signing a piece of paper. It didn't matter who you are. I knew the collapse was coming. So I moved up to the country and got out of debt and grow my own food, and so my son could know where things came from, and thought that 2007 was it. And they've just inflated this economy to another $23 trillion, just add another $1.5 trillion to the debt with the corporate tax cuts and everything. And I just started speaking out about 5-6 years ago. I have a blog called TABU blog, Taboo for Towards a Better Understanding blog.com. And then I have a web YouTube channels that are doing really well. APlaneTruth, PLANE or PLAIN, because I'm getting censored by YouTube. I had to create another channel. So I've just been trying to do investigative reporting, trying to put it in terms that people can understand. I have connections in Wall Street with analysts that are still in the business that can give me and provide me with information about how the business side of doing it. You can get a lot more information from people inside that are looking for profits, so they have to show the numbers about what they're doing. So I've just been trying to chronicle the hidden occulted world of money. And then that led into 9/11 and led into GMOs and led into geoengineering and led into, oh my gosh, the Wi-Fi, touchless torture, target humanity. I did a 3-hour piece on that. Elana's covered that quite well too, the MK Ultra programs. And just connected with like-minded souls now that are waking up and doing the breaking wind and doing the hard work to let others learn from. And it's been quite an exciting past 10 years, I got to tell you, Richard.
Yeah, I can imagine, for all of us too. And it's an unusual experience being actually in a sci-fi adventure movie, and we're in the audience and among the cast at the same time. So I guess if you're looking at the themes of all of this, because we've got enough information to do this show for the next, several months without a break here. So I think if we're looking at the common themes that run through all of these subjects that we just now brought up, it seems to me, and you guys can tell me what you think of this, but it seems like an overall theme of tightening control, surveillance being part of that, but surveillance as far as passive observation is being replaced as quickly as possible with active control of every aspect of life, and not just control, but gradual destruction. And the kind of destruction that's going on is compromising the life support systems of the planet to an extent that it really doesn't logically look like they intend to bring them back. So, Elana, why don't you start? And from all of these different lines of investigation that you've been involved in, what do you think's going on? And then we'll look at some of the specifics.
Well, of course, I have to begin with the space fence lockdown. When I was looking at the chemtrails and HAARP, and the HAARP system, and now we need to think of it as a HAARP system, by the way. It's not one installation. It's a mass of installations that are all calibrated to pulse and work together for distributing frequencies of control. I was very impacted by Billy Hayes, the HAARP man, who used to go on radio shows with me quite a bit. And Billy worked for a 3-letter agency that will remain nameless for his entire life, since he was 8 years old, due to his father's involvement with that three-letter agency. And that three-letter agency actually has run the HAARP geoengineering program from day one, as Bernard Eastland unfortunately discovered in his own involvement. So that Billy is the one who put me on the trail of the space fence, because really, the space fence, if you look it up historically, you'll see that it's a sort of necklace of radar installations across the mid to southern United States. And it was definitely involved in the SDI program, Strategic Defense Initiative, back in the Reagan, Cheney, George H.W. Bush years, but it had been tabled by the time of Clinton's reign. And the reason it was tabled is that they did not have Bernard Eastland's ionospheric information that really HAARP was built to get. They needed to set up an energy system if they were going to have planetary control, or as I call it from the military doctrine of full spectrum dominance. They needed to have more juice in the atmosphere so that they could have unlimited, and I have to underline that, unlimited wireless operations. So that's what HAARP was about. It had a tremendous amount of power that could be multiplied, and it zapped the ionosphere. Bubbled it out into space as it was heating up to break the electrons off of the atoms, produce ions, positive and negative, bring those down over the horizon along the Birkeland currents that were connecting us to our sun and therefore our ionosphere. And so what they basically did, they had a very successful run with HAARP from, I would say, they got it up in the early 2000s, and it ran all the way to 2013, when they did shut it down for a time. But they had been so successful in basically turning our atmosphere into a mini ionosphere. And people notice that in a variety of ways. They definitely notice it in their lungs, because we are not breathing the same atmosphere that we once breathed. They probably notice it in the summer in particular, when, as even people here in the Pacific Northwest, which is known for being a bit cool, people will say, gosh, I felt like I was being microwaved today. And little do they know how exact a term that is. That is exactly what is happening. We're sort of being gently fried, boiled like a frog, by our heated up atmosphere. But as you know, even a heated up atmosphere can be used to produce amazing snowstorms, amazing ice. It's just what you have to have with this technology, and that's, of course, part of the cloud cover story. And the SRM, the solar radiation management, is, yes, they have a problem. They have to keep the heat down of the technology they're using for all their wireless operations as they weaponize planet Earth. And that's part of what the cloud cover is. At the same time, they need a lot of conductivity in the cloud cover, so that they can, you can't really project waves anywhere, transmit, receive. In a vacuum, you've got to have matter. You've got to have some stuff. So now we have this era of nanoparticles, and very few people understand how serious this really is, the nanoparticle era. It's in our foods, it's in our cosmetics, it's in our clothes, it's everywhere. In fact, if you get I've got a wonderful little 60 power microscope that I bought on the web for $7, which has an infrared and an LED light, and I can look at anything up close, and I see fibers everywhere. They're everywhere, and I know it's not just here in my geographic area. It's as Clifford has said time and time again. It's everywhere. So that's my concern now, Richard. Is really that. Yes, we're under surveillance. We're under surveillance not just by satellites, which we are accustomed to and which Edward Snowden alerted us to. We're under surveillance by sensors and microprocessors on the nanoscale that have been released in the trillions, the MEMS, GEMS, and NEMS, as they're called, that are up in, they start out in the stratosphere, and then they some of them end up in the ring around the planet, which I talk about in the Space Fence book, this ring around the equator that is, again, highly conductive. It's full of the very metals we're breathing. It's full of the MEMS, GEMS, and NEMS that are doing surveillance. And we're breathing all this in. So the surveillance is not just on the exterior, it's actually on the interior of all of our bodies, of our soil, of our plants, and this catastrophe, I can only call it a catastrophe heading toward a cataclysm, is giving them masses of data because they're all transceivers. They're all able to communicate, and that's my concern about a surveillance world, especially now that the 5G antennas are being set up in neighborhoods, for God's sake, neighborhoods of houses full of people, and that these millimeter waves in the 5G, this is new for the gigahertz system of communication. This will be, to me, the linchpin that will hold together the final lockdown that will give access to above the planet, on the planet, and in the bodies of living beings. This is why I'm working nonstop on this, and why this synthetic biology book is so essential to show how all these systems work together.
With trillions of sensors, like you've described, many of these nanoparticles, including sensors, do you think that the computer system is in place to handle that magnitude of data at the moment, or are they still working on it, do you think?
No, absolutely. This is AI run. I think the AI run began as J.D. Walsh at her Level 9 News alerted us during the drills that were going on in 2015. I think that we have had AI running things since at least then. And of course, I'm glad you brought that up, because the Space Fence must have AI systems running it, and they must be calibrated and coordinated to work together. And you've seen some of this, and to me it was a real picture that we all saw recently with all the hurricanes in the Atlantic. You saw how they were parked out there for days. I mean, to be able to build a hurricane is one thing, and certainly they've been able to do that for decades. But to park them and keep them all the balls in the air, all simultaneously for as long as they decided they needed to, that was AI. There's no way that you could keep a calibrated system that could do that unless you had one brain running it.
Right. Now, and there was an American scientist who had a Russian partner, and they developed the technology for laser-based or satellite-based control of hurricanes and other storm systems from space. And he was on Alex's show recently I'm not sure what happened to him right after that. I've been trying to reach him. And he was saying that the hurricanes in the recent group with Harvey and the ones that went through the Caribbean, those were clearly created from scratch and directed and parked all via laser control. So it kind of fits into what you're saying.
Absolutely. Laser is just an amazing directed energy technology that can be used for so many purposes. But again, remember, you have got to have that particulate matter in the atmosphere in order to 24/7 be able to move even with laser.
Yeah. Now, I want to set up something for our format here for the rest of the show. Jamie and Elana, I want to make sure that I'm not dominating or over-controlling the conversation. So it's going to be like we're sitting around in a virtual living room, and either one of you feel totally free to just jump in spontaneously if the other one's saying something that you want to add to. But I want to ask Jamie a question, and then we'll get back to kind of a free form. Is that with what Elana sees as an overview happening here that she just described, with including the nanotechnology and nanofibers and what may be the most pervasive of all kinds of pollution, actually, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of other bad ones. How does this tie in with conclusions that you are at this point in your research, Jamie?
No, it dovetails perfectly. I mean, I've been studying this space-based power systems, which Elana is one of the very, very few that I know has even looked at it. And I published in my YouTubes about how they steered the hurricanes, not just from the ground during Hurricane Harvey, not just from the ocean-based systems, but from above using their space-based power systems. And also that they're using space now, space platforms. They're planning on putting all of energy creation using the sun, using RF frequencies, and using lasers to direct down to collective solar panels. You see these huge collective solar installations going in down in Fresno. Google's opening up the largest solar, da-da-da. These are all to bring energy from the space. All these hurricanes, fires, you hear power out, Atlanta power out. That's all part of this, bringing this whole new space-based energy system down as part of their whole space fence, as Elana's calling it. So I wanted to read you just real quick. While she was talking, I pulled up from my site and from my work one of the patents used, weather management using space-based power systems patent, U.S. patent 20100-224-696A1. Space-based power method altering weather using space-based energy. Energy from the space-based power system is applied to a weather element such as a hurricane and alters the weather element to weaken or dissipate the weather element. The weather element can be altered by changing a temperature of a section of weather element, such as the eye of a hurricane, changing airflows, changing path of the weather element. And I'm sure you all remember the document owning space 2020 or 2025 by the U.S. Air Force back in 2009. Well, once you own space, you own everything. So what Elana is talking about is these false ionosphere they bring down to control the weather even more acutely, and they can steer weather. They can change your moods. They can put any type of fires, hurricanes, whatever. I call it weather war terrorism. But here we have the clear patent saying they can do this just through the hurricanes, and then we have patents taken out by Solarian Corp. They have patents in Canada, China, European Union, India, Japan, Federation of Russia, United States. Sun's radiant energy is 1,365 watts. Approximately 22,000 is the satellites immersed in sunlight. Solar arrays convert this solar power to electricity. The electricity is converted to radio frequency and transmitted to the Earth's receiving station. The ground receives the antenna, converts the EF power directly to electricity, transmits it to the customer via the electrical grid. The essential elements of a SSP plant are the solar power satellite, the ground receive station, and the SSP plant and control center. And they're planned on having it rolled out in 2016, but now they're saying in 2020. This is why PG&E with the fires in California, PG&E's being told they have to take the hit for the power lines causing the fire. They're increasing the rates around here quite quickly on our PG&E bills because they're saying we have to pick up the cost because they're having
Hold on, Jamie, you're breaking up. I don't know if I'm the only one who can't hear you. Doug,
he's breaking up. He's breaking up for me too.
Okay, Jamie, we were missing your signal there. You want to try it again? Okay, I think it's really hard to hear you. You're barely there. While we're seeing if Jamie can come back, I want to make a comment, which is that all these technologies which are being used for the surveillance, control, and destruction of life, normal life on this planet, it seems to me that in addition to continuing the monitoring and explaining for the public of what's actually going on, that they're not supposed to know, that all of us involved in. Yeah, hold on, Jamie. I just want to finish saying one thing. You're still really shaky there. It seems to me that another whole class of technology is needed, for example, to clean up the completely pervasive pollution from nanoparticles. And somebody needs to be working on the antidotes for all of these things that we're going to be describing today. Just like we need an alternative internet communication system for the one that's being censored and all those things. They call for alternative solutions, that you might say, and somebody needs to start looking at that seriously.
But somebody has already. That it's all there. It's all there. I know it. And the person I would look to would be Dr. Kesh in Iran. He is being he's been targeted. He's been he's shut off from the West. We can't hear a thing about anything from Iran now.
I noticed that. Yeah.
And Kesh, I know he has the technology, but it will not be allowed to be used. It is there. And the other problem is, Richard, of course you can imagine, we're talking high tech here. We're talking lots of money needed for the technology that can clean it up. But the technology to clean up radiation, we have it. The technology to clean up the nanoparticles, we have it. The question is, how can you get the money purse strings to do that instead of what they're doing? Exactly,
and that's the and they know that it's that important. That's the reason the money system is so tightly controlled through the central banks.
Yeah,
and I completely agree with that. And I was wondering about people like Kesh, though, because while he was brilliant on the technological side, and I could be wrong on this, you can correct me, but I think he was very, displaying a certain degree of naivete when he sent the technology and said that it would be appreciated by these world leaders like Obama and all the other ones who are working in coordination for the destruction. And he was saying that those were the people he was going to assume would make the best use of his technology. And he was sending it to them.
I think many scientists are naive, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, we have incredibly brilliant people missing some things that are obvious, so I guess it takes a cooperative network of us to cover each other's blind spots.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could... Yeah, I wish there were an open dialogue. Is that too much to ask, since we have the so-called United Nations? Where's the open dialogue?
Right, exactly, yeah. Unfortunately, the United Nations has a little bit different agenda and mission, but the difference in one sense between the negative hierarchy and the rest of us is that they're very, very well organized in general. And most of the people working for positive causes, many of them don't even know each other exist at this point.
Well, that's the problem with the so-called anti-geoengineering movement, of course, is that it's all internet-based. Oh. And it's what I call the beauty of it. There is a beauty, and that is that it's a horizontal movement. It is not a vertical movement. There is no real leader, despite what some people think of themselves. It is a horizontal movement, but the problem is that yet then organization just... It can't happen except on a local level, which is not all bad. Not all bad to go back to the local level, because if we're going to survive anything that would get too extreme and couldn't be balanced anymore in this technology, it will have to be on a local level.
I totally agree. And I've noticed even on a local level, the main challenge seems to be that rather than just being happy to work for the good of everybody, we get people getting involved in ego concerns to show that who's right and who's better and smarter than everybody else. And you see this within the movements of not only the anti-geoengineering people, but just about every other one, the 5G people, and there's too much of a tendency of humans to put the priority as fighting with each other rather than solving the issues.
Yeah, it's the Tower of Babel, too. It's
something like that. Yeah.
We only have one form of communication, really, and that's the internet. Yikes. That's why we need Jamie back, because he's got the Agenda 2030 figured out. He's really brilliant in that.
That would be great to talk to. I'm using the highest cutting-edge technology to try to get him back right now,
yeah.
Which is pushing the button on the computer.
Did you notice that he got cut off as soon as he mentioned PG&E? Gee whiz, I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
This is always a total coincidence, just as a general rule. But it says it's trying to get him back right now. If we can't get him on the computer, we'll get him on his phone.
Okay, because let's go back to that point, because he's much more well-versed on the Agenda 21 going on. He's right outside Santa Rosa. He knows what's going on down there. It's a real cameo of how this sustainability stuff is being foisted on communities just so they can control the local level.
Okay, so while I'm trying to get him back, for the people that said that don't only know that Agenda 21 is some kind of conspiracy theory they've heard of, why don't you give the basics of what that is for the new listeners who don't know?
Well,
that's a big question. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, because in a way it's better that I know so little. Certainly I've heard it bandied about for years, and certainly it dovetails very evilly with my space fence lockdown idea, and the way the atmosphere now is being used for ultimate conductivity, and why, first we were given the radio, that was a military technology. Then we were given the television, that was a military technology. Then we were given the computer, that was a military. You get my drift. So now we're moving into 5G.
In other words, these gifts had some strings attached.
Oh, big price. And now every time I see a young person absolutely addicted and glued to their iPhone, right, I feel such sadness, because you can see what's happening is that nature is being supplanted by virtual reality. Mm-hmm. And it's not anymore just a matter of entertaining the American to death. It's a matter of now really moving into those nanobots that are swimming in our bloodstream and have easily crashed through the blood-brain barrier. This is programming on a level that MK Ultra Nazis and doctors could only dream of. Right. And so now we're electronically owned, and we need to know this, because you remember, Richard, I'm a Rudolf Steiner person. Yes. Steiner was a great teacher for me. I was always a bright person with a good brain power, but he was able to show me how to think between my heart and my head. And when I was younger, I was not able to do that, and I was sort of a geek and up in my head. Now I can see through that thinking really is a spiritual activity. Thinking really, really is. And I notice it particularly, sadly, because so few people around me can think anymore. Right. Not only do they not read, I can see that. Not every great thinker has to read a lot of books, not at all. But to be able to think and not just emote and not just opinionate.
And also to know what they're observing as well, right in front of them.
And to believe in our perceptions, because really Steiner very clearly in the Philosophy of Freedom points out that percept is first, concept follows. And without the concept, you can't really do much in life. I mean, people forget this. They think, when they think thinking, they think school, and they think bad experience or empty experience or not interesting. I was bored, whatever. But the concept and thinking are essential to realizing what is going on with the time you have been born into, and that you are expected to do what you came to do. And that the concept and the thinking, they have to follow the perception. Right. And if our perception is being halted and diverted into a virtual world, not at all in touch with nature, or people, for that matter. You know, I'm on the internet way more than I'm talking to any real human being. Then you have this problem of perception, and then you will have a problem with thinking, and then you will have a problem with your conception. And that is a real scary. Now we're talking hive mind. That's all we're talking. Right. We're talking collectivism on a hive mind scale, especially when you have the nanobots in your bodies that are all programmed to be hive mind themselves. Right. And they are simulating and taking over your cell structure and producing biofilm on the outside of your body and producing, what did Elon Musk call it? The net... fabric, a sort of net fabric inside your body. That's what they produce, because this is their hive intelligence telling them to do this in the host. Yeah. So more than ever, we need clear thinking, because consciousness, clear thinking, can help this. This is not a fringe benefit of knowing this stuff. This is power. This is real power, and it's not electromagnetic. It's a human power that we have called consciousness, and we must be able to think in order to make it grow and use it.
I think the global rulers agree with you completely, because almost everything they're doing is mainly geared to preventing that from happening.
Yeah, and that's where they're setting up the Agenda 21. Sorry for my tirade that went way off base.
No, that was a good one.
Agenda 21 is the structuring of local communities through a thing called sustainability, environmentalism, public safety is a real catchphrase.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. I mean,
to people who are not feeling safe, it certainly sounds wonderful. And what are they making us into? A people who do not feel safe, right? With one event after another.
Fear-based, basically.
Yes, one false flag event after another. People don't feel safe. They're begging for safety and security. And that's, to me, what Agenda 21 is. Now, 2030 is different, and that's where I want Jamie here, because he understands that better than I do.
I'm trying his telephone right now through a very high-tech system. It's technical. I'm not going to try to explain it. It's where you
please don't.
You push the numbers on the phone, but let's see if he answers.
Elana, were you talking about the neural net?
Thank you. That's the term I wanted. Yes, when Elon Musk brought it up, he said that was the only way that we could fight AI in our brain. That was really interesting to me, because either he doesn't know.
Jamie. Please leave a message. Thank you.
Okay. I'm leaving a message. Either Elon Musk doesn't know what the neural net really does, or that was just part of the disinfo he's been trotted out to do, or he'll end up like Howard Hughes ended up. It's it's very dangerous to be a rich man now, because you really have to obey and march to the tune of other rich men. And with Elon, I did notice a big change in him maybe 2 years ago. It seemed to me he was afraid, and it seemed to me that he had gotten a message. And now he's doing all sorts of things, and maybe has been allowed to do some good things with his money, but on the whole, I think he's been captured.
Yeah, I think, what it seems to me is that the policy of governments such as the United States and others is that real information on anything environmentally beneficial or real health information or anything else like that would help increase general consciousness is absolutely forbidden.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it is. And yet there are people like me, and there are many, many people like me who are allowed to skirt the edges of the national security truth that is being lied about, as long as we remain fringe, and I would add, don't have a PhD.
Well, yeah, because people will really think that you know a lot more if your last name is PhD or your first name is doctor.
Yes, I think those people are really in a bind, and I feel for them. I really do.
Yeah, interesting, because this may be an indication that one of my current strategies is really a dumb plan, because I've been in the middle of a PhD program in health sciences for 7 years, and thinking that additional credential would help me reach some of the government circles or other people like that. But it may just mean that I just can't talk anymore after that.
I don't know, but the PhD seems to be a real stopgap, and I learned that through the what happened to a person I was in touch with who alerted me to how lithium was being distributed on the Oregon coast, and people were getting sick and being spaced out and all sorts of things, and how a whistleblower from the state weather department contacted her and a few other activists, and basically said, yes, you're right, that is going on, and then she became targeted, and now she cannot have any contact with me, because as soon as she contacts me, she's hit. So
you mean electronically?
Oh, yeah, electromagnetically, and she has a PhD, but not in science. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter. People don't think in that detail. Yeah.
And I only have a little M.A. after my name.
Well, the other thing is you use a lot of multi-syllable words, which keeps you safer, because most people wouldn't follow that much.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I think they really watch for, if you break through to a channel that is suddenly reaching millions and millions of people who are actually understanding you, that probably makes it much more dangerous.
Well, and I don't know if you know this, but one of my videos of my talk in Portland, and it was because it had the word forbidden in the title, I think. Somebody did that. I certainly didn't do it. But it got 1 million hits, and it was said to be that it was forbidden throughout the world, or some dramatic title like that.
That is a good way to get more attention.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I doubt that people understood everything I was saying in the video, but it was a pretty good PowerPoint presentation, so I'm not sorry it's out there.
No, that's good. In fact, a lot of the advertising techniques used to destroy people, we could take good lessons from them, because there's no reason not to use similar insights into human psychology for things that are good. Yeah. Spread them more quickly.
Yeah.
I've been trying to reach Jamie, but his phone wants messages only, and his internet seems to be totally just gone.
So Jamie's gone.
For the moment, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we will proceed. One thing I did want to clarify, and Jamie brought it up, so let me continue with his idea of space-based weapons. This is true. We have entered a space age, just not the one John Kennedy had in mind for us.
Yes.
When he was killed, he was attempting to work with the Russians, the Soviets,
right,
and to make the incredible adventure of space a multi-nation endeavor. And he was, of course, not allowed to do that. And instead, everything must be weaponized. Yes. And we are still running on that motif. Though for a moment when Mr. Trump entered office, I had a hope, a tiny, very tiny hope, I'll tell you that he would be debriefed by someone honest, and that he would be told what this is doing to his American people, this program. But that has not happened. And meanwhile, he's playing chess with all the rich men that keep him in office and keep him alive, probably. So, I'm just sort of going behind whatever he does, like the latest that he's going to take the property of anyone who is not dedicated to human rights. He's just like the police do with the drug busts they do. They take their cool cars and turn them into cop cars.
It's for their protection that they do.
Yeah, whatever that is, it'll be abused. Oh, we all know that. Right. So I wait and see what he is doing, given the briefing that he has been given, and I go on about my business. So back to the space issue. Yes, he reinstituted the space agency, which has not been instituted since. I think Star Wars, since back with the SDI program. It's back up and running, and he has put the Air Force in charge of all space operations, which the Air Force was in charge, but now he has said that it really is in charge. So, okay, the Air Force, we know them well. That's HAARP. That's not all that far from the U.S. Navy. You're talking intelligence, you're talking NSA, and you're talking a new agency I want everyone to know about and to really pay attention to, which I think is more powerful in this space age than the NSA, and that is the NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Okay. And the NGA probably is the one making the decisions about AI, run, space fence, and space operations. Okay, so space. We're in a space age. Now we look at planet Earth. If you're in a space age and you have designs on conquering, or whatever nice word you want to use, the solar system, and we have seen evidence of that in the Cassini missions, the various missions going all the way out to Saturn, the recategorizing of Pluto as a non-planet, as a white dwarf, and so all the way to Saturn looks like to me the territory that they want to own and have full spectrum dominance over. They know, as the Electric Universe and the Thunderbolt Project people know, that this is an electric universe. They know that. They're not in Newtonian science or Einsteinian science anymore. They're in quantum science. They don't want us to be in quantum science, so we're going to just lag behind and see the oohs and ahs of what unfolds in space and not know what we're looking at, and jump to the idea of Nibiru and and the sun is dead and whatever. So, a vast disinformation campaign is still in place, because if you're going to conquer a solar system, you have to control your own planet. You've got to have absolute control over your own planet. You can't have a democratic system. Right. You've got to have the best of the technocratic fascism at your fingertips. So that's what we have going now, a technocracy, and everything is technical. We must be technical, we human beings. The age of enlightenment and Renaissance, so that we inherited from Europe, it's like they never happened. Now we're all to be drones on some level. We can develop the fantasy of how cool it would be to be able to change your virtual realities that you're experiencing, just as you change your clothes every day. I think a lot of the younger generation are heading in this direction after years of very subtle and silent programming that they have been under with all the technology they've been raised with. You see, it's very important to see that the reason this is so dominating, so tyrannical, this technocracy that's coming down on us now, and we're beginning to feel, they're beginning to show its face, is because they are dedicated to a space age. They do want control over all the planets. They're going to have to use electromagnetics and plasma. They're going to have to run a lot of plasma experiments in our now ionized sky. They're going to have to run plasma experiments in the subtle bodies that we all have as human beings. We are not just physical bodies, as you well know, Richard. We have subtle bodies. They are going for the gusto in all this because they must have command and control over this planet, at least. And that's really important to understand. If I were working for a space agency, or I were a scientist under need-to-know basis, and I had signed non-disclosure, what would I know? I would know it was for my nation. I would know it is for that there may be actual alien presences that the public is told are all fantasy, but that I myself have been briefed on, and that we need to have command and control over this planet. And I would trust that my little piece of the puzzle, of course I'm never shown the entire puzzle, will be handled properly. If ever I break out of that and become a whistleblower, my family will be jeopardized and my career will be over. I mean, you can see how it's being done, and that we are far beyond the Constitution now. We are far beyond nationhood. Other than as an address. And of course, Trump has walked right into this. I don't know how much he knew before. I assume very little from what I can see how he's doing things. And so, it's a constant learning curve to go beyond what you have been told exists and what doesn't exist. We're all in this now, a very exciting time to be alive, because you really have to develop some discernment. You can't wait for the experts to tell you this is true, this isn't true. Even Elana Freeland. What is Elana Freeland? Well, Elana Freeland only knows what she's studying and what she's grappling with and yanking out of the shadows of national security in order to make it speak. I mean, this is where we are now. There is no program in the United States or anywhere, well, maybe in Germany there might be a program, or in Northern Europe. But there's no program in the United States I know of that you could go to and study any of this. Right. It's all under a cloak of national
security. It's a tremendous requirement for self-education if you want to deal with the situation at all.
Which is exciting. And I'm surprised. I've been very pleased in the anti-geoengineering, anti-chemtrails movement how many people are just going up to bat. Many people are pursuing it with gusto. But I'm surprised still by the hordes who aren't, and who just, wow, oh, gee, gosh. I mean, you know what? I don't need that emoting stuff. I just want people to work alongside me to figure out our conditions so that we can prepare the younger generations that will be asking at some point when they get over their iPhone, what is going on. So, I make that plea to people. Please, I'm already lonely enough here where I live. Nobody in my town wants to talk to me. Nobody. And I turn to the people on Facebook, and I put up and endure the weaknesses of the Facebook format. I put up with it because I want people to know that we need all hands on deck now,
Yes.
not just the experts.
That's right. And it's interesting that you mentioned that nobody in your town wants to talk to you because you're in the Seattle area, right? And we just we're looking at the work of this whistleblower from the security company. They're saying that in Seattle and probably in most of the major cities around the country, there are experiments going on right now or testing to control the emotions, as you mentioned, emoting. Emotions always trump intellect in most people, and even in people that don't think that's the case, it usually is. And they're working to control emotions of groups of millions at one time through these electronic transmitters of various kinds. And I suspect that the new 5G system is another aspect of the same coordinated technology, because if they can control the emotions of the population, they don't have to worry about people finding out about the things you said they need to study.
Well, let me comment on the 5G. Can you still hear me well? My computer's doing something funny now. I'm under some sort of attack. Can you hear me?
You're coming through very clear.
Okay. Yeah. So the 5G is not just more of. It is completely different from the 4G, 3G, etc. This is a direct attack on the genetic code of people, and it's the millimeter waves, Richard. It's the millimeter waves that they're the same that the TSA uses when you go through their machines at the airport. Exactly. They are deadly on our soft tissue organs, all the way down to our mitochondria that protects our DNA. So, so this is a horse of another color, you might say, and it will be. As I said, I consider it a linchpin of the final, we've got the space fence locked down in place. Just get those 5Gs into the neighborhoods, because the smart meters didn't quite make it. Smart meters are good. They're good little neighborhood watch spies. But because there's been such an outcry of the public, now they're slipping in the 5G with all the, faster internet, faster downloads, whatever. Right. So that is key to, please, everyone needs to research 5G and watch for those white vans and all those telecom guys coming to put them into your neighborhood. Because remember, a telecom corporation is not just a profit-making corporation. It is a military contractor. Be under no illusion about them. And be under no illusion about trucks saying other things either. It's like everyone has to be a spy now.
Yeah, and the 5G is being promoted because they say, this is what you want. The public is demanding much faster internet access, tremendously greater volume of data usage, and this is all to just try to do what the public is demanding. That's why the 5G is being rolled out. Oh,
of course, yeah. And everyone needs to go and do a search for Tom Wheeler, the former FCC chairman, and watch his speech on 5G. I always remember that speech. I've listened to it about 3 times, and if I want to look at the face of evil,
yeah, I agree. And he was, if I remember that speech correctly, he was saying, and this 5G rollout is going to generate a huge amount of what he called economic activity, and he said that's damn important. In other words, nobody object.
Right, that's damn important. Let's put that word damn in there.
That's more than very, very important. And so, it's just to try to do what the public is demanding. And the fact that it's going out in such density, what is it, every 50 yards or something, they're putting another transmitter right outside somebody's window.
Oh, that's it. The problem with the millimeter wave, I mean, it's fantastic for confidential phone calls. Fantastic. Cannot break into it. Will not need any encryption, whether it's
in other words, it'll go directly to NSA with no interference.
Right.
Okay, great.
But it is extremely dangerous to our organisms. and to all of life. It will be broadcast.
It's different than TSA because you can't opt out and get a pat-down.
Well, and no, and it broadcasts throughout the neighborhood, and it collects information from the Internet of Things. And the IoT is essential to understanding how targeting of all of us will be done very easily once 5G is up.
Okay, so why don't you tie that together and tell people who've never heard of it, what's the Internet of Things?
The Internet of Things are the computerized bits that your car has in it now. How many computers are in your car? I don't know, maybe 100. In your house, it's your refrigerator is talking to your dishwasher, is talking to your television, is talking to your smart meter. All of these things are now calibrated to work as one hive mind. And they will be communicating. That was the idea for the smart meter, that they would communicate with the smart meter, and then they down at Utilityville, they could just pick that up and give it to the most the closest what's it called, where they're roundhousing all the information to send to Utah. But because of the smart meter problem, and I think because they are now ready with the 5G millimeter tech. Maybe they weren't ready when the smart meter came out. Now they can put that in, and it will collect all the data. So it is your IoT, the newer your appliance, the more likely it is an IoT appliance. And it will pick up, it has microphone, it will pick up all the conversations, it will pick up when you're home, when you're not home. All of that is about surveillance. And the 5G will be the collection and will also be broadcasting on a level that could be implemented if ever they wanted to target you in your house specifically, or if they want to just target the entire area of your city that you're in, they can then utilize the 5G mechanism as well. And the cell towers, working with the cell towers, the Gwen towers. Now, you know, cell towers are very tiny. You can't see them. You won't be able to see them. They've found that these big towers are not necessarily essential for this operation of surveillance and control over local populations. So this is our condition. Add to that the nanobots inside us that resonate with these frequencies that are being pulsed around us. You get it? You get the picture here?
I think the first appliance that they found out had cameras and microphones inside of it was a VCR. And actually on Alex Jones's show, he brought one of those in because everybody said he was insane for suggesting that. He took one apart on the air and showed the camera and microphone that were in it, and got physically attacked after that, and they tried to kill him. But now it's much more widespread, and I think they're going to have to outlaw having old appliances for anybody that wants to avoid it by saying they're energy inefficient, and probably similarly with old cars, I suspect.
Yes. I mean, I recently moved, and what I was looking for was a place where everything was older. The house, the appliances, and I was able to find one. I don't know how long that will be true. And I want to correct you. No, the television was the first one before the VCR that had full, you're watching television and it's watching you. And that has always been true.
Yeah. And supposedly in the Samsung manual after that, it said, be careful what you say in your house because everything can be sent off to third parties.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for the warning, guys.
Yeah, that's great. We just won't talk anymore. It doesn't matter because we're going to live in virtual reality anyway.
Well, and I don't own a television. I don't own a VCR. I am so Luddite when it comes to some things because I know how they're used as two-way screens. I don't really need that. And I don't own a cell phone. I don't need someone to know where I am 24/7.
So what happens when you try to talk to some of the people in the area where you live that you were saying none of them will talk to you? Oh,
they're very polite, very nice people. they want the conversation to go along very narrow band. And I comply. I write books. I don't need to have a lot of people I talk to. I suddenly realized that one day when I was whining about how nobody wants to talk to me.
Right.
I don't need that. I can say what I want, and I have a presence on the internet, and these people don't want to know. I always remember what Steiner said. He said, "Don't answer a question that hasn't been asked." And of course, he was concerned with people's spiritual evolution as individuals, and I resonate with that. I don't have to browbeat people about what's going on. They will find out soon enough. Right. I live a very insular, quiet life, which is perfect for writing, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, it's actually really a blessing. And I think that Rudolf Steiner in his time dealt with some similar issues, maybe not with computers, but a lot of people considered him to be completely insane because he had insights more than the average people in his time.
Yes,
so
yes, that is true. I walk in noble footsteps.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps us a lot. So I guess what you're doing is you're tying together all this stuff through Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, which is much more than just putting people into densely packed cities in tiny apartments, although that's part of it.
Well, it is, and I thought of that when the Santa Rosa and Ventura fires happened, is I feel that it was a real estate deal, just to be very brief, and that now the properties will be up for sale to other fat cats that wanted maybe some coastline property, but that is Agenda 21 as well, as it's making people move from rural or scenic places, perhaps places where they're growing their own food, having their own livestock, moving them, this weapon, this DEW thing will be used to move people toward urban areas where control can be less expensive, bottom line stuff.
Per person,
Yes, and they will be able to really do the electromagnetic 5G control on them. So that is definitely happening, yeah.
Right. Doesn't it seem like California is really a central targeted area for all of these programs?
It is, but California and New York have been used for decades. I've watched, anyway, in my relatively long life, I've watched how they are used because they're each on a different coast, and experiments are run there. Education experiments, population density experiments, biological warfare experiments. I've watched it happen for a long time. This is simply, more of the same, but now, as we know, China owns most of, 10 or 20 years ago I checked, and China owned almost all of the coast of Southern California, all the property, even the property the Navy was on. And now I assume the Chinese own more of California because they certainly own almost all of South Island in New Zealand. So I'm just sort of watching the real estate, and that to me is the really important part about Agenda 2030, I would say. I think Agenda 21 is about the local level, and 2030 is about a larger scale level. Somebody can correct me if I've got those backwards. So California has been in drought now for going on 7 years. Right. It has had a few heavy rains, but I think those revealed that they flooded instead of were absorbed into the soil. And again, here we're looking at aluminum from the chemical trails. The aluminum is just deadly for soil. And so it's a food basket control. It's a water control, as Deborah Tavares has emphasized over and over again. I feel very, very sad about California. But Florida, too, is used for some other things. It, again, is a coastal city. So in order, I suppose what I'm good at is the big picture, and what I'm really bad at is, I know what to do. I know what to do now. I keep saying what I think people should do, but nobody really wants to hear what I'm saying, and that is learn to think, learn to do research, take responsibility for your lifestyle. Really look at your lifestyle. Do you really need that quart of chocolate ice cream? Mm-hmm. Do you really need to spend your money on going to Disneyland? What is your entertainment quotient? What is your take care of yourself? Are you still going to Western allopathic doctors? Are you still putting all your eggs in the basket of a medical system that simply will kill you over time? Have you considered looking at other medical ways of taking care of yourself? All of this has to do with what? Consciousness. Taking responsibility for your life in an era with difficulties. Other eras have had other difficulties. This is not the first era of technology anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have to go back several thousand years to get to one that had this scale of technology. But we've been here before, folks, and you still have your individual life. You still have quality control over that life to a great degree, unlike many people in the earth, in the world. So take responsibility. That's what freedom to me is. Freedom is not being able to flop yourself on the couch and zone out on drugs, food, and TV and movies. That is not freedom. That is baby stuff.
Well, if you're supposed to learn how to think and school didn't work, how do you do it?
Well, how I do it?
How should the people in general do it when you're that's one of the first things you suggest?
Well, right now, Facebook is the town square of human community in the United States. Mm-hmm. I have no community in my physical community. Everything has been isolated, and everyone has an antipathy to anyone whose opinion is not the same as theirs. I noticed that. Yeah, and that I did want to say that can be very much coming from their iPhones, because the iPhones are transceivers. They are transmitting, and they are transmitting frequencies that can resonate with your mood, with the way you look at life, with your fear quotient, with your security quotient. It's like we're carrying around their weapon and paying monthly for it.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
It is amazing. That's real mind control. So anyway, so the internet, Facebook, I'll just take Facebook because I'm on it way too much, because I have sites that are closed and dedicated to the information that I want to awaken people to. Mm-hmm. And so I'm commenting, I'm reading people's, I'm putting a lot of energy into it. And I'm expecting that some of those people, very few, some of those people are going to take the bit in their mouth from those bits that I give them, and they're going to pursue it and think about it, and they're going to fill their minds not with what Brad Pitt is doing this week, but how this works. Why would Elana say that? Why would other people on Facebook say what they're saying? What is in my body? And you see what I mean. We're doing Socratic technique on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And you pursue this, and then you start going, how much am I perceiving on my own, really? Or am I just waiting for someone to tell me what to think? What can I look at in the sky, what's going on around me, what are people like around me. It's a constant Socratic technique that will awaken the thinking activity again. And then maybe you will read some more. I mean, it's like these books I write. Why do I spend years writing these books when hardly anyone reads? I think the Chemtrails HAARP book has sold 7,000 copies, which is good. It's good for a fringe book. But it's still just 7,000 people out of millions, billions of people. Wow. I write the books for people 50 years down the road who want to inquire what happened back now. Yes. Because to this point, I'm the only person writing these books. Do you realize that? I mean, there are some books on chemtrails now, I'm happy to say, and good books, and I really thank those people. But we need to push this national security veil, push our way through it. Mm-hmm. They are more and more telling us things, but lacking context, so we don't know how to contextualize them. We don't know really what it's saying to us. We're just inundated by masses of information. So learn what context means. Try to figure out the context. You find someone who's good. Like right now, I'm thinking of Pete Ramon. I have lots of good people, but Pete Ramon and Christopher Fontenot, two science guys on my site, giving me lots of good information. Okay. Read them. They are into the electric universe. What's the electric universe about? I think I'll go and check them out. You have the internet, for God's sake. The internet. Yeah. You can go places. Instead of watching the boob tube and reading the Hollywood review on what Hollywood stars are doing and who's coming apart this week. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's what I.
Right. So explore and learn. Expose yourself to new ideas.
Yes, and keep yourself on the track. Develop a discipline. Yeah. The word disciple is implicit in discipline, and I am very disciplined because we're not alive here very long. You got to really
and you don't. Most people don't realize that till they're finished with it. And then
they sit around and die. Like I'm kind of watching some neighbors do. That's what I recommend. It does take some discipline. It does take saying, no, thank you. I don't want that. I'm going to do this. Yeah. But that's what we have to do. We live in a very exciting and dangerous period.
So you have to question things that are normally considered not questionable.
And stop waiting for the experts. Yeah.
Exactly.
The authority figure thing. We're still not over it. We're still not over it after centuries. It's unbelievable.
We're trained all our lives that the authorities are there to take care of us, and they would never say anything wrong.
Yeah, despite all the news to the contrary.
Right, exactly. That couldn't be right. So it seems like an issue of education, and that's what you're really doing with your books and with the Facebook group. And by the way, how do people get into that Facebook group or apply for it?
It's the Elana Freeland, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum. That's the name of the group. Okay. And there is, I've never had to do it, but you can look for that, and then you'll find something that asks me for permission. I will then go to your site, your Facebook site. That's all I have to gauge anyone by. And I will decide if it looks like you have the kind of a serious intent that might be adding to our group, not just taking away from it. Okay. And then I'll decide. I have another site that's closed also around my Sub Rosa America series, which is Elana Freeland, Sub Rosa America. And that too is closed. And it's not nearly as active as my other one, but I'm able to put things there and draw people who are interested in the issues that I cover in the Sub Rosa America series.
Okay, great. And I also noticed that when you were saying to question everything, which was primarily what's going on around us, you also said something about looking at your own lifestyle. What are you talking about with that?
Well, it's what I mean about how you're using your time and what you consider important. I mean, if we were living in a war situation like they are in Syria, what would our lifestyle be there? Because we would have soldiers in the street, we would have the imminent danger constantly at our back. what decisions would we be making? Here in America, if the houses aren't being burned down in our neighborhood, we pretty much just go along with the mind control of the television and our computers and our iPhones and talking with people that aren't saying anything of much of anything. I mean, I listen to conversations in my town all the time as I'm sitting having a cup of decaf or working on a piece of writing in a public place, just so I can be around real human beings. And I listen to their conversations. They're just about nothing. They're just about nothing. They don't have a clue that we're at war now. Because
that seems almost like you're describing the scene from one of the old Twilight Zone shows.
Yes. Oh, I think we live in the Twilight Zone, don't we?
It could be black and white. Yeah.
I mean, instead of Twilight Zone, let's call it electromagnetic smog.
Zone. Okay.
We are living in that. And I think that's a tremendous influence on our consciousness. So when I say lifestyle, that's what I'm talking about, is really looking at how you're using your time and considering the possibility that we are at war right now for the future of humanity. And what would you do differently if you really got that? Yeah.
Yeah, because on a superficial level, if you look around like the people you're talking about would do, it looks like everything's just normal and fine. And the electromagnetic smog is not even visible.
Exactly. We're living in an era in which we need to be able to peer into the invisible and develop concepts about it that we can use to have a full and healthy life and pass that on to the younger generations. Learning to see into the invisible, it sounds pretty mystical, doesn't it? Well, it is pretty mystical, but these are electromagnetic waves and scalar waves, and we didn't even get to that today. We are living in a time of quantum physics, and things are shifting. The veil that has protected us for many, many millennia is being rent in two. And things are flooding through into our area, and I really didn't want to get into that at all today. But this is war. This is spiritual warfare and physical warfare, because your immune system, you're not going to get another one of those. It's like adult teeth. You don't get one in the mail, and your doctor certainly cannot give you one. Please protect your immune system and find out how to do that.
Yeah, and in fact, it's a really interesting point because, Clifford has been on our show many times, and last time he was on, I should send you a tape of it because there was some really interesting stuff that came out, and we were talking about those invaders from cross-domain bacteria and other things that got into the blood, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. And what was very interesting to me is that even though those are artificial organisms, or at least partly they are, regular factors of immunity still seem to work against them. So, in other words, if you were to maximize the benefit you could get through an intelligent lifestyle, you're not just going to raise your immunity to getting the flu or something. It actually does have some effectiveness against these nanoparticulates and cross-domain bacteria.
Oh, tremendous. Tremendous. I can't stress it enough. And part of it, and Clifford knows this well because I had him on a particular diet 3 times back in the day when we were in Santa Fe. Yeah. And he got his health improved immensely, and his immune system was strengthened immensely just from diet. Right. And that was eating alkaline over acidic. And that, you need to study that because you can't just go by the medical charts. There are some things that are acidic on the outside of the body, and during the oxidation, turn alkaline. So this is all part of the old Chinese medicine yin-yang system that I am steeped in. And that's all I've used. I haven't been to a doctor since I was 13. I'm 70 now. Nothing hurts. Everything's good. But I know what to do, and the nanos are part of it. And that we have to add that to our lifestyle now, taking those nanos out of our system. And Tony Pantalaresco is into it. There are lots of people experimenting, and through, again, the internet, our town square, we can learn an amazing amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't you think it's incredibly encouraging that even these organisms that basically shouldn't exist in a normal nature system, even they can be defended against by some of the same lifestyle things that you're alluding to?
Yes. I don't feel fatalistic at all about it. It's just that, again, we have been taken unawares. And now a vaccination will not do anything for us. The elites, the global elites might have their own vaccine for dealing with what they have loosed into our atmosphere. I admit that. But I don't really give a fig about it. I don't want to go and break into their house and steal the formula or anything. I really want to just do our own experimentation and find our own way through nature. Because we are nature's children, and I do not want to be a virtual reality child.
Right.
No desire.
There's that famous picture in I think it was in an Austin convention when the whole audience in a giant auditorium was wearing these virtual reality helmets, and Mark Zuckerberg was walking around the edges just looking over, making sure that everybody was completely absorbed in it and wouldn't even realize where they were.
I remember seeing that. Yeah, it was like seeing in the 50s the 3D glasses.
Exactly. Just a little step more advanced, you know.
Yes. Oh, there's so much to learn. I mean, the frustration, I understand people's frustration with the internet and Facebook, especially if they're novices on it, is that you have to do a lot of searching and we wade through a lot of crap in order to get to what really works, what doesn't. You have to become your own lab. Your body becomes your own laboratory. You're running your own experiments to see over a few days what happens. You'd rather take a pill. You'd rather some authority figure would give you a great long Latin term diagnosis so that you could feel that you were being, everything would be taken care of. But I think enough people have been through the medical industry to realize that you come out the other end like a sausage and you're still not really better, whatever better means. I mean, a lot of what allopathic medicine treats is symptoms, and it suppresses the symptoms, and then people say, oh, great, I'm better. No, that's not how it works. You really have to build and appeal to your immune system. Your immune system is way more brilliant than any doctor could ever even imagine being. And I have been opposed to the medical industry since I was a 60s person, because I was opposed to everything establishment, actually. But that one in particular, because I had the real privilege to study with another great mind, Michio Kushi, a biochemist who came to America to share what he knew about Chinese medicine in a Japanese macrobiology way, called macrobiotics. And I studied 6 years, and I think that his information and the diet that I was put on for those 6 years saved my life and changed my genetics. Because in my family genetics, I had a lot of bad stuff going on: cancer, diabetes, mental problems, schizophrenia. And really, it was by taking charge of my own body. I mean, what a concept in America, huh? Stopped eating meat, stopped eating sugar, took no drugs, no marijuana, natural drug, whatever, no drugs and no pharmaceuticals. Just really dug in and said, I want a real immune system. I want it to be strong and take me through life so I will not be a broken down old lady. And by golly, at 21, I at least had that much wisdom. I certainly didn't in other areas of life, but I did in that. And I have been trekking that road ever since, and thinking in terms of yin and yang, which is a little more in this area than acid alkaline.
That's really unusual to have that kind of insight and motivation as a young kid like that.
Exactly. Well, I think I'm a pretty old soul and been around the block a few times. But it is true that I loved the science. Biology had been my second major in college, and I loved translating the Eastern system into the Western system. It totally made sense to me. Right. So I highly recommend that people experiment. And as far as stopping, I really want people on Facebook, please don't say to me, let's stop this. There is no way to stop this, to my knowledge, barring a catastrophe, because this is a space age. And they are. When
you say stop this, what's the this that you're?
This would be the chemtrails, HAARP, space fence, synthetic biology, 5G system.
Okay.
There is no way I can think of any possibility of stopping it, barring a catastrophe. Mm-hmm. And this has happened before in the history of the Earth, as you well know. Yeah. So we could be heading toward that. That's certainly the route I took in my Sub Rosa America fictional history, historical fiction series. Mm-hmm. Is a catastrophe finally happens in 2019, and now we're going to look at what produced it, and that's what all the 4 books in that series are about. Yes. So I know that people would love to think that if we march in the streets and we write our congressman, we could make this stop. If we could just get to President Trump, he would make this stop. Yeah. None of that is true. This nation, even if Trump is able to expel the George H.W. Bush Clinton cabal that has been in charge of this nation since George H.W. Bush was in charge of the shooter teams in Dallas in November 22nd, 1963. Mm-hmm. If he were able to get that cabal out of here, President Trump able to do that, we would still be faced with global elitism that wants command over the earth, and it appeals to the military mind and their scientists in order to go on and make this a true space age. So let's just assume that's true. And meanwhile, what do we do back home here? Well, we begin with consciousness, learning to think, learning to research, learning to put things together in a context that makes sense, learning to perceive again and believe in our perceptions, and our immune system, looking at our lifestyle, figuring out what serves us, what doesn't, giving up the chocolate ice cream if it doesn't serve our lifestyle, building an immune system that can handle nanoparticles. This is a whole new ballgame. Nanoparticles, I have a chapter devoted to it in the Space Fence book that's coming out. Nanoparticles are unique in that, you may not know this, that they do not follow laws, really. They take their own way once they are in commission through whatever the technology, whatever the algorithms that produce the technology have in mind for them. They are kind of like Heisenberg's principle in that the consciousness around them will impact what they do. You getting my drift here?
You're saying they're not just smaller, they're different.
They're not natural. They're not natural at all. And whatever, once their little teeny-weeny bodies are made, and we're talking submicron, right? We're way down there. Yeah. And I haven't even talked about picos, and, there's many things smaller than nanos.
Yeah, it gets smaller. Right.
Once the structure is built, who knows what inhabits it? Who knows? I don't.
Right. You mean what kind of consciousness it holds?
Yes, because that's what that phrase that I believe Newton uttered, nature abhors a vacuum.
Not only on the physical level, too.
Yes, Newton, what he was getting at was whatever form you build here on the earth, no matter how small, something will enter it and exist in it. So there is no vacuum here. No vacuum is allowed. Right. All the universe, including the Earth, is consciousness. Right?
Yeah, well, that's the opposite of the conventional thought that only man is sentient and everything else is inanimate.
Exactly. And now this is the advantage of living in an era in which we need to be able to peer into the invisible with our intelligence. That's the only thing that's going to be able to do the peering, folks. Mm-hmm. Not your, oh, gee, gosh, oh, I'm afraid, oh, wow. No, emoting won't do anything. It's your intelligence, that's what is God-given and nature-given, that you will be able to send it like an arrow into these invisible realms of concepts and entities that are all around us now. This is the only thing that will have authority over them, is your consciousness.
Right, and that's the authority. The global rulers agree with that because everything they're doing is trying to prevent the acquisition of consciousness
and to undermine our authority entirely.
Yeah.
First, they took away our ability. It's understandable that we don't believe in our perceptions anymore because everything is on such a vast scale. But, it's still there. It's all there to be perceived. Now, they have machines that can perceive these things. They have very expensive, sophisticated machines that can perceive on these, for example, the nanoscale. All right, they have that. They got the big bucks. They got the power. What we have is our experience as individuals. We have that experience. And I can experience little creepy crawlies under my skin now and then, crawling around. Mm-hmm. So what do? Do I go freak out? No. I talk to them. Hey, critter, what's up?
Right.
I don't like that. So then I go over and I give it a little rub and I say, okay, go to sleep now. And so, in other words, I am relating to yet more entities living inside my human body. Yeah. We already have lots of entities living in
you can only start learning how to do that when you realize the idea that everything is conscious.
Everything is conscious, and this is very important, Richard, I have authority over these entities. I am a human being. This is not some low-life last step of the gorillas. No. The human being is a very amazing creature, not the final product of evolution, as Ray Kurzweil would like us to believe, Mr. Singularity.
Right.
No, the human being is very unique. In fact, Rudolf Steiner says that the human being is the religion of the gods. Mm-hmm. And he's being serious. He's not trying to be metaphorical.
It's a neat way to say it. Right.
Why? Because we have free will. We are a spiritual entity living in a physical body in a physical world, just like Madonna sang. And we have this amazing consciousness that we have not developed nearly to what it can develop. And that's my big resentment. I'm glad I got to this. My big resentment about singularity and transhumanism and nanobots and the hive mind and all this stuff is that they want to take away my individual right to pursue my consciousness at my pace and in the way I want to pursue it. They want to take that away and turn it over to the state.
Right.
That is not going to happen with me. As I said in the speech that that 1 million hits, not on my watch.
Right.
So I will do everything I can in my power to prevent this for the sake of the human beings still coming. It is them I owe my allegiance to. And this fantastic species that I am a member of, the human species, they will not cyborg my species. So
maybe that's another way to evaluate elements of the lifestyle that you said should be looked at, is that what parts of it work to enhance consciousness and being wide awake, and what parts put you to sleep.
Well, yes, but I'm constantly faced with this mediocre way of looking at being a human being and this apologetic stance of, oh gosh, we've ruined so many things in the poor earth, and we should just get rid of human beings because then the earth will be fine. And this is sort of percolates under everything, thanks to the Al Gores of the world, the Rockefellers.
The semi-serious bumper sticker that said, "Save the Earth, kill yourself."
Oh my gosh. See, I mean, we have been sold a boondoggle. We have had our world inverted in a satanic manner. It is entirely inverted because we're a collective nation. We're a mass society. A mass society is great for a hive mind. It's not great for true individuals. It's hard for true individuals who really believe in that the human being is a type of being who is attempting, and I underscore attempting, to develop free will. Free will is not easy. I now am 70, and I have a pretty good sense of my free will and am able to wield it pretty well now. But look how long it took me.
Yeah.
And this is only one lifetime, 7, 8, 9 decades maybe. Not very long to be able to.
In a flash.
Yes, and one must work all that time. It isn't like I just cruised for many years. I've been working on myself and my relationship with the public, and what I can offer the public as my signature to this lifetime for all these years. I mean, I was not on cruise at all. Never owned a television, and and had to deal with all the things that people have to deal with: family karma, racial karma, gender karma. All these things have to be faced if you're going to develop free will. And so I understand how people will hear me say this and they'll feel kind of high over my words and yeah. And then I'll be gone and they're back with their life. And now they're facing everything as usual. It's just as usual. And then they'll wait for the next speaker, or they'll wait for the next high, or the next low. This is the passive recipient of life operating. There's a difference between just hearing that stuff and actually letting it sink in and then using it. Well, in developing those baby steps, when you hear I remember when I was 21 hearing Michio Kushi lecture, his brilliant lectures with his bad English, and I would come away and have my notes, and I'd go over them, and I'd think, well, what one of these things can I do now? Okay. I mean, I knew I couldn't do it all. I'm just a baby. Yeah, but one could become two, and it can keep going from there, right? That's how it does it. That's exactly how it does it. And then it even gets logarithmic. Pretty soon it's not just additive. It's logarithmic. 1, 2, 4, 8. 1, 2, and now boom, like multiplicand of 20 times that. So this is how consciousness works, but it isn't handed out like a pill to people. It's something you have to strive after. You have to go after, and you have to fall and get back up. Did you realize when you first started being self-motivated like that, did you start out at some point by realizing that you were kind of asleep and just going along in a trance so that you would know you had something to break free of, or did that come later? Oh, no, I knew. I died when I was 22 in a wave at Makapu on Oahu. I had the good fortune to die and not die. Mm-hmm. I died. I remember this. I couldn't find the top of the water. I tried body surf a wave and it's a very pitched beach there, very, very dangerous. I shouldn't have been doing it. It was stupid. Okay. And I couldn't find the top, and I'm being spun, and then a little voice inside said, "You're going to die now." And I remember hearing then the wind, this amazing wind or some sort of high-pitched something, and I'm speeding down this dark tunnel, and I'm heading toward this beautiful light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm like, I'm going home, and I was super happy. I mean, super happy. And then suddenly, I'm going backwards. I'm saying, no. And then I ended up, and I have no idea, it was a miracle in itself. I ended up on the beach, and I had ripped all about an inch of flesh off of the center, all the way down the front of my body to my pubic bone.
Wow.
I was puking seawater, and for a few days after that, I was depressed that I was back.
Right, yeah,
and then
exactly.
I suddenly, just like a flash of light, I got it. You have work to do. Get busy. It was like, wow. And so it somehow was a comfort to me to know that I really do have a home as a spiritual being, and that I'm here for a while, and I have come to do what I came to do. I came with certain things to do, and a lot of karma, personal karma, really was a huge obstacle for me for decades. I had to work through it, one thing after another. But I kept going. I didn't give up. I didn't get into drugs. I didn't get into alcohol. I just kept going because I really wanted to fulfill what I came to do. And I eventually was able to do that with a little more style. I certainly didn't have much style in those early decades. I was just floundering like so many people do. But eventually, yes, I finally got hold of it, and I've moved from one movement to another. I was in the Waldorf movement for years, where I was discovered Steiner's work, and I've been now involved in the Chemtrails movement. And that's how I go. That not everybody goes that way. I move from mission to mission. That's how I do life.
I think one of the important things that you're bringing up is the sense of purpose is really critical, because without that, the motivation doesn't come up to really know what to do.
Well, and that's so bizarre, because I really don't think there's a person on this earth who did not come with a purpose. And
right, but how do they get aware of that? I mean, most of them that are halfway into the virtual reality at this point, it's almost like they can barely think clearly about what purpose even means, other than, get through to the week till Friday, or, whatever they have to do at the moment. They need a way to start thinking how to get the sense of purpose back.
Well, and I guess the way I did it, they can't do, because I read the classics as a child and a young adult. I always knew I wanted to be a great writer, so I read many, many writers, and I then encountered. I think I can honestly say that Michio Kushi at 21 was the first great teacher I ever had. I had good teachers before, but he was great, and I understood that he was great, and the inspiration he gave me, I did not let it slip away. I clung to it. I held it, and that's the problem today. I feel is the weak will that people have. They've been weakened by all the technology, by all the comfort and the convenience in America. Right. That weakens the will. I've always lived very Spartan. I've had opportunities to live wealthy lives. I didn't want that. I wanted independence, and I wanted to live on my own terms. I'm a 60s person. I'm very proud of it. And I understood that the many conveniences that are dangled in front of people, perhaps they have a hunger for that. I've never had a hunger for that. Zero. I have a hunger for knowledge and a hunger for serving the public. And so that is what I do. Therefore, I don't have much of a personal life. Another person might have a very rich personal life. That's a good thing. That's not bad. But it's more just remembering that no one came here by accident, and no one came here with no purpose. Everyone comes with a purpose, but somehow you've been shanghaied if you have lost it. And you need to go back into that childhood and that youth and find out where that happened and concentrate on that event and get yourself out of that, because you're still locked in that one event of the past. And that's what it means that the entire world is consciousness, the entire universe is consciousness, is time does not exist in that realm.
Right. It reminds me of what some of the Native American tribes and other indigenous tribes around the world used to have their own versions of what they called a vision quest. And when they were a certain age, supposedly, growing up, they would go off into the wilderness and fast and just survive with nothing from civilization until they got some vision of what they were meant to do in this lifetime.
Yes.
It's like something like that needs to be going on all the time.
Well, that would have been adolescence. And now what our adolescents do is they run afoul of the law. That's their rite of passage.
Yeah.
And that is very unfortunate, because then that record will give them an additional karmic burden as they attempt to find themselves. Now, we've lost our way in the West. We've utterly lost our way as a culture. Mm-hmm. Now, the good news is we still can develop individualism. And individualism, we do not, this is my opinion, having died at 22, we do not lose that individualism at death. We take it with us.
Right.
Take it with us, and we can work it there, wherever there is, have no idea, mm-hmm. and we'll bring it back with us. Mm-hmm. Nothing is lost. Nothing is lost. And that's the problem with living in a materialistic culture like America. I was living in Europe for a few years, and I wanted to come back to America because this is the Titanic, and it's going down. And I wanted to witness it, and I wanted to write about it. I wanted it in my consciousness for when I die, that I can take this with me to remember, to prepare for the next time. Mm-hmm. This is not, I'm like Carl Jung in that interview on TV in the 50s when he was asked if he believed in God, and Carl Jung said, I don't believe, I know. Mm-hmm. Well, I know these things. And I don't have to get into an argument with anyone over it. You're going to learn whatever you're going to learn. But I know that we take with us what we glean here. So get busy, people. Yeah. Get busy, because you have nanoparticles in you whose filled with entities that seek to draw your humanity out of you. So get busy learning what it is to be human and being grateful that you are human and that you are going to be a protector of future humanity by your acts, whatever you choose to do, but they have to be your acts in this life. Exactly.
So as a bottom line for this whole discussion, for the general population that might be listening to this at some point, and we want to spread it out and share it a lot, that are kind of eyes half closed, sitting on the couch, watching television, waiting for the next task that they have to do. And, I know that some people aren't ready to be reached, and it's not our job to break into their reality. But for the ones that are on the edge of that and susceptible to the reminder that you do have a purpose and you can get back to an exciting level of being alive, what would you want them to remember to get started with that?
Turn the TV off, for one thing.
That's a really good idea.
Smash it. I had a television smashing party once in Seattle years ago when I was helping to start the Seattle Waldorf School. I had a television smashing. We smashed about 6 TVs. We all felt really good. Wow. Of course, it was a mess to clean up and take to the dump and stuff. But I know that humanity has always been led by a very few people, by a cutting edge in any period of human history. I'm a historian, so I've read a lot of histories. All right. That said, would you, if a person can ask themselves, given that they have dug down into their childhood and youth to find out where they forgot what they had come to do, wouldn't they like to be on the real winning side of this war we're involved in now, which would be those individuals who could not be turned into a hive mind, could not be cyborged, could not, by virtue of the strength of their individual choice, from their whatever amount of free will they have been able to glean in life. Wouldn't they prefer to be on that end of things in this war than on the side of the victims? And those, I haven't told you, Richard, the worst news, which I don't really want to go into, but suffice it to say that those who are involved with the global elites, they are at the very top. They are occultists. Mm-hmm. They are very sophisticated occultists. They know all that I've said today and more. Mm-hmm. And they know what happens after death. Mm-hmm. And what I want is for people to take with them the best that they can be once they go through those portals, because that will help us in the future. This is a long war, and this lifetime to me represents only one big battle.
Yeah.
This war will go on, and I am so happy and privileged to be on the real winning side, which is the side in which humanity is held high for the evolution it is deeply involved in. And that's what I would wish for people, is to do whatever you need to do to get to that realization that it is good enough to be on the real winning side, not the power and the money and the destruction that these so-called people are committed to. I once had a phone call from a guy. He actually was do you remember the TV series many years ago I think it was called Dexter?
Yeah, I don't know if I saw that one, but I remember the name.
Yeah, it was an unusual series. Truthfully, I never saw any of it because I didn't have a TV, but the director or producer or writer or everythinger of that show was a very gifted fellow, and he called me on the phone once, having heard of me in another context. And we had a long chat. It was one of the most wonderful conversations I'd ever had with a truly creative individual who was able to produce and had amazing ideas and all that. We talked for like 2 hours. At the end, He says to me, "Elana, what would you say is the most important thing you have learned so far in your life?" And I said, without even thinking, I said, "To do whatever it takes to prepare to do whatever I must, whenever I must do it." And he said, "You're a true graduate. You won't hear from me again." And he hung up. And I never heard from him again. And I knew I had been speaking to one of the most conscious people on the planet. An amazing, amazing consciousness. And his stamp of approval really meant a lot to me. And I didn't even know I knew that before I said it.
Right.
But you know what? I do know that. And that's exactly how I live.
Yeah.
And I invite others to live the same way. It's quite the adventure.
Yeah. So wake up and start preparing for what comes next.
For whatever it is. And trust that whatever you decide is preparation, and trust that whatever you decide is not preparation, and dump it.
Yeah, exactly. Value your time, right?
And value your choices. That your intuitive self knows why you came and why you're here, and follow that. Yeah.
I think what's so good about that is it's not dependent on any current circumstances or time. It's really timeless. And if somebody figures out the ancient technology to open this up and listen to it, in the far future, it should be just as relevant as it is now.
And I just thought, Richard, I forgot to tell you that I also have a website now, but it's still under construction, so I tend to forget it. It's ElanaFreeland.com, all lowercase.
Okay.
And a very dear lady just moved to Mexico. She's been working on it all year, and I've not been easy to work with, I'm sure. I'm pretty. It's getting there.
Okay, so you think in the next few months or something it might be up?
Oh, it's up. You can get in
now. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Go ahead. And, and even let me know what you think doesn't work or whatever. It's under construction. It may always be under construction.
Yeah, that's fine. It just keeps getting better. All right. Well, that's incredible. I think we've given people some ideas that they can work with if they're courageous enough to do it. And hopefully we'll do another chapter of this before too long. So hold on.
Yeah, and hopefully Jamie will be able to stay with us next time.
Yeah,
it would have been a very different conversation had Jamie.
We'll try again with Jamie next time. So
okay. I'm glad you know about him now, though.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. And hold on, and we'll say goodbye in a minute here.
Okay.
All right, there goes Elana Freeland. Sorry we got disconnected from Jamie Lee. I tried quite a few times to get him back, and we'll have to invite him back on the show. He's got a lot more interesting information that I'd like to have him share with all of us. But I thought Elana's points about reviewing the details of diet and lifestyle were great. You may have heard those somewhere before. And especially the fact that those things can even help with resistance against unnatural invaders, cross-domain bacteria that Clifford Carnicom was talking about on our show last time he was here, and Morgellons fibers and all kinds of nanotechnology and things. That our natural immunity is so strong that if you find out what develops that, and I'll give you a hint, it's not vaccines that are designed, as we've had many of our technical guests on to tell exactly how they're designed to destroy your immune system. But fortunately, there are inexpensive natural ways that you can maximize immunity. And if you learn about that and put them into practice in your own life, like Elana was talking about with your diet and lifestyle, exercise, sunlight, grounding, sleep, all the things that you need, then you can have great resistance against even these unusual things that we're surrounded with right now. So if you're interested in learning more about that along with us, go to lostartsradio.com/club, CLUB, and sign up for the new format of the Saturday show. It's changing from a public show to a private club format because it gives us a little bit more safety, I think, in some of the things that we're going to be talking about that are absolutely forbidden for any of us to know about, let alone discuss publicly. So technically, it's not going to be public anymore. Starting in January, it's going to transition to a private club. It's also hopefully going to help us without hyping products that I don't necessarily think you need or anything like that. It's going to help us get the money that we need to keep operating, because we're not doing that yet. We're not taking in the funds we need to keep this show going. So if you'd like to help us do that and expand our work and eventually build the school that we want to do as soon as possible, go to lostartsradio.com/club and learn about the idea that we had for doing all those things at the same time. It makes it cheap. It's a minimum of $10 a month. Everybody gets the same full access, and we're going full video. So it's going to be a much more fancy format starting in January for the Saturday show only. The Sunday one will stay the way that it's been. Free access for everybody, radio only, and the video format for the interactive club where we discuss exactly how we're going to do all these things individually and worldwide. That's going to be discussed in a number of free videos coming out shortly. As soon as my time allows. I keep thinking I'm going to do it right away, but hopefully in the next week or so, we'll start seeing that stream of free videos coming out, and that will continue as time allows. But I hope you can be in this with us. It's going to be incredible, and if we can get enough people to sign up as members, either $10 a month, which is fine, or if you have good resources and you want to help us more, $100 a month, $1,000 a month. We need a lot of money to really do this, and it's time to get it moving now. Money's not evil. It's something that we can put to great good, and I need your help with it. So if you're in a position to do that, go to that site and sign up for the club that's going to be on the Saturday show starting in January, and watch how the project grows. It's going to be quite incredible. We'll be getting into a lot of exciting stuff, plus still taking your calls through the private format and getting into more detail of sharing information on things we can do. It's all outlined at lostartsradio.com/club, and it's going to be explained in much more detail in the videos that are shortly to come out. So I hope you can be there with us, and in the meantime, everything on the site that you're used to is still there. It's all free. The forum is there for discussion of these things during the week, especially if you're considering or actually doing them in your own life, starting to upgrade what you're eating and drinking and your sleep patterns and exercise and sunlight, all the things that you really need. If you want to share what you're experiencing and get mutual support from others doing the same thing, come to the format on lostartsradio.com. Share your experiences. Also, the Facebook group for Lost Arts Radio is fully functional now. And on the radio website, you can also sign up for the free newsletter. And there's a lot of educational videos and articles that are all free, and we're putting them more up there as fast as we can. So that gives you enough to work on with all the homework as we've been talking about. Thanks to Elana and Jamie, and I hope Jamie will come back soon, where we can overcome the technical difficulties and hear in full what he's been doing, what he's up to, and the great video work that he's been doing. So he'll be back soon, I'm sure. And in the meantime, have a great week, and get your password for the club, and I'll meet you here next Saturday.
As of January 2018, the Saturday live call-in show is now an interactive video platform called the Planetary Healing Club. The cost is just a $10 minimum monthly donation, automatically billed through your PayPal account. Sign up at lostartsradio.com/club. The Planetary Healing Club is every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. You get your link to participate in the show upon signing up as a member. Those shows are also archived as well for club members. Listen to our new shows with guests every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. All Sunday shows with guests have archives freely available on our website at lostartsradio.com. You can also find them at blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio, as well as our YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/lostartsradio. Mixcloud at mixcloud.com/lostartsradio. And finally, look us up under the podcast directory on iTunes. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/lostartsradio or on Twitter at Lost Arts Radio. Be sure to join the free Lost Arts Radio Facebook group as well. Just search for Lost Arts Radio Group within Facebook. You can also join our forum on our website if you want to interact with other listeners. We also have links to all of the great independent musicians whose music we feature each week on Lost Arts Radio. When you do your Amazon shopping, please use Amazon's Smile program at smile.amazon.com. And when you choose Lost Arts Research Institute in Sedona, Arizona as your charity, Amazon will donate 0.5% of whatever your order total is to Lost Arts Research Institute to help fund the building of the school and keep our radio show on the air. Please visit lostartsresearchinstitute.org for more information on the school we want to build. Be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter on our site under the Radio Show tab or right from the button on our Facebook page. Contact Richard at richard@lostartsradio.com or myself, Doug Diamond, at doug@lostartsradio.com. Thanks again for listening to Lost Arts Radio, and we'll see you again next week.
to knock you off your feet. Seeing you again tonight just did. Funny how the years have flown, nothing's changed, and girl, you know that I belong to you. For a moment I went back in time, it passed before my eyes. The love, the heat, the passion that we shared. You look the same, so beautiful, nothing's changed, and girl, you know you're still the one I want, baby, stuck in my heart, and I'm just gonna tear us apart. Those summer nights, wildfire, crazy, crazy nights. It's never been more obvious, I guess I always knew that I belong to you. Oh yeah, I belong to you. I left town, pursued my dream to find that pot of gold. You moved on and married my best